In March 2010, the body of 30-year-old Violet Monroe was found in a blood-soaked honeymoon suite at the luxurious Esperanza Resort in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. An investigation would uncover the horrifying truth behind her whirlwind romance with 34-year-old business tycoon Nico Rossi, a relationship that began 6 months earlier at a charity gala in New York City. On the peaceful morning of March 15, 2010, the Esperanza Resort, known for its pristine beaches and world-class luxury, became the epicenter of a nightmare. Guests in their suites were starting their day, some enjoying breakfast on balconies overlooking the turquoise ocean, while others prepared for excursions. But on the 4th floor of the resort, a disturbing discovery turned the day into chaos. The scene in room 401 was devastating. Violet Monroe lay motionless on the marble floor, a still figure surrounded by dark, drying blood. The injuries on her body told a story of pain and violence. Her face was swollen and bruised, deep lacerations marked her arms and torso, and her hands showed defensive wounds, a silent testament to her desperate attempts to protect herself. Around her, the suite was in complete disarray. Furniture was overturned, shards of glass glittered on the floor, and blood splatters stained the cream-colored walls. A once celebratory champagne bottle, now broken, lay near her body, its jagged edges telling a story of the violence that had unfolded. Maria Torres, the housekeeper who discovered the scene, would later tell investigators that something felt wrong even before she opened the door. The "Do Not Disturb" sign had been hanging there since the previous evening, unusual for honeymooners who typically requested morning housekeeping. Her screams upon finding Violet's body echoed through the hallway, bringing security running. Detective Marco Hernandez arrived within the hour, his experienced eyes taking in details others might miss. The suite told 2 stories, one of explosive rage evidenced by the chaotic destruction, another of careful calculation in the methodically packed suitcases missing from the closet. "Where is the husband?" Hernandez demanded, noting the empty balcony where witnesses had last seen Nico Rossi sitting calmly amid the chaos. The resort's security footage would provide the first clue. Cameras captured Nico leaving the resort at 5:47 a.m., carrying 2 designer suitcases. Walking beside him was a striking woman in dark sunglasses, MIA DeLuca, the mysterious sister who had been visiting the suite throughout the honeymoon. They climbed into a waiting black SUV and disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness. As investigators pieced together the events of the night, a disturbing pattern emerged. Several guests reported hearing an argument erupting from the Rossi suite around 2 a.m. "There was a woman's voice screaming, 'You're not who I thought you were,'" recalled the guest in 403. Then crashes, terrible sounds of struggle, and finally silence. The front desk revealed that MIA DeLuca had checked out at 5:30 a.m., nearly 3 hours before Violet's body was discovered. Her room, 407, had been meticulously cleaned, with no evidence left behind. The staff remembered her as elegant, authoritative, and close to Nico, too close for a supposed sister. By afternoon, international authorities were alerted. But Nico and MIA had vanished. Their private jet, scheduled for a departure to New York, had instead filed a flight plan for Venezuela. By the time investigators reached the airport, the plane was gone. This wasn't a crime of passion, Hernandez told his team as they processed the scene. This was planned. The question is, for how long? The answer would begin to emerge as they dug deeper. Security footage showed MIA visiting the suite multiple times during the honeymoon, always when Violet was at the spa or pool. Staff members recalled hushed conversations between Nico and MIA in secluded corners of the resort. One bartender remembered Violet's growing unease, how she'd ordered 3 vodka tonics in rapid succession the night before her death, her hands shaking as she glanced over her shoulder. What started as a tragic honeymoon murder was unraveling into something far more sinister, a carefully orchestrated plan involving obsession, betrayal, and a love triangle that would shock even the most seasoned investigators. As Detective Hernandez stood in the blood-spattered suite, the ocean breeze now carrying the scent of death and expensive perfume, he knew this was just the beginning. Initial reports to law enforcement suggested the real story might stretch back months, even years. As news of the murder spread, other luxury resorts across Mexico and the Caribbean began reporting similar visits by the mysterious couple. Always charming, always elegant, and always disappearing just before tragedy struck. The hunt for Nico Rossi and MIA DeLuca was beginning. But Detective Hernandez feared they were already far beyond reach, planning their next performance in a deadly game of love and murder. 6 months before the tragedy at Esperanza Resort, Violet Monroe stood alone at the Manhattan Children's Hospital charity gala, her black cocktail dress a shield against her past. At 30, she was finally rebuilding her life after escaping an abusive marriage that had stolen her 20s. The deep scars weren't visible anymore, but they shaped every careful step she took in the world, every guarded smile she offered to strangers. She didn't notice Nico Rossi watching her from across the ballroom, didn't see how his dark eyes followed her movements, studying her like a predator sizing up its prey. He had selected her weeks ago, after learning about her history through private investigators. Vulnerable yet resilient, beautiful but not attention-seeking, wealthy enough to move in his circles but modest enough to be impressed by his lifestyle. Perfect. Just like the others had been. Their accidental meeting at the champagne bar was anything but chance. Nico timed his approach perfectly, reaching for a glass just as Violet turned to leave. "I'm so sorry," he apologized as their hands brushed. When she looked up into his face, he gave her the smile that had charmed dozens of women before her. "I'm Nico. Please, let me get you another glass." His voice carried just the right amount of warmth, of genuine regret, of promising possibility. Within an hour, Violet found herself captivated by his charm. Nico spoke passionately about his business success, his charitable work, his dreams of finding true love. He listened intently as she shared carefully edited versions of her past. What she saw as genuine interest was actually careful calculation, each sympathetic nod, each gentle touch of her hand, designed to draw her closer. Every response was measured, every story carefully crafted to mirror her own desires and fears. The romance that followed their first meeting was a masterpiece of calculated seduction. Each morning brought new surprises to Violet's door, rare orchids on Mondays, her favorite, as Nico had learned from her Pinterest boards, artisan chocolates from Belgium on Wednesdays, matching the ones she'd liked on Instagram, and handwritten poetry on Fridays, quotes from the classics she'd studied in college, information gleaned from years-old Facebook posts. Nico's courtship was perfectly choreographed, though Violet saw only spontaneous romance. He would call just as she finished therapy sessions, his timing impeccable, his voice warm with concern about her healing journey. Late-night texts arrived precisely when she felt most vulnerable, each message seeming to read her mind. She never suspected these moments were orchestrated through the hidden cameras he'd installed in her apartment months before they met. Their first weekend away came 3 weeks after the gala. Nico flew her to Paris on his private jet, the cabin filled with white roses. The Plaza Athénée had their suite prepared exactly as he'd specified, the same champagne her parents had served at their wedding, details he'd gathered from her mother's social media, her favorite music playing softly, playlists studded from her Spotify. He had recreated moments from her past, making them more perfect, more magical. Intimate dinners followed at exclusive restaurants, Percé, Le Bernardin, Daniel, where Nico somehow always secured the most romantic table. The Maitre DS greeted him like an old friend, though they'd actually been carefully bribed weeks in advance. Each menu was customized to include dishes that matched significant moments in Violet's life. Her grandmother's roast chicken recipe reimagined by Michelin-starred chefs, the first meal she'd learned to cook made extraordinary. Violet's friends watched in amazement as she transformed from cautious survivor to radiant bride-to-be. "It's like a fairy tale," they gushed, not seeing how Nico's eyes tracked her every move, how his hand always rested possessively on her lower back, how he subtly steered her away from anyone who questioned their whirlwind romance. What appeared to be magical coincidences were the result of months of meticulous planning. The chance encounter with her favorite author at a coffee shop? Arranged. The surprise backstage passes to the ballet she'd loved as a child? Calculated. The vintage copy of her favorite book, identical to one she'd lost years ago? He'd been collecting these details, these pieces of her life, long before she knew he existed. By the time Nico proposed 6 weeks later, in a private garden filled with fairy lights and memories he'd carefully curated from her past, Violet was completely enchanted. She never saw the dark satisfaction in his eyes as she said yes, never noticed MIA photographing the moment from behind a carefully positioned topiary. For Violet, it was the perfect love story. For Nico and MIA, it was just the opening act of their latest performance. But some noticed concerning details. Isabella Martinez, Violet's closest friend, saw how Nico's charm could shift to cold anger when Violet talked to other men. How he insisted on knowing her whereabouts at all times, installing a safety app on her phone. The way he slowly isolated Violet from friends who questioned their relationship's intense pace. The possessive glint in his eyes when other men looked at her too long. It's different this time, Violet assured Isabella over coffee in November. Nico's nothing like Marcus was. He makes me feel safe. She touched the massive diamond on her finger, a 3-month-old engagement ring that cost more than most houses. He takes care of me. She didn't see how Isabella's face tightened with worry, didn't notice her friend's hands trembling around her coffee cup. There were moments, looking back, when Violet should have seen the truth. Like the night at Le Bernardin, when she caught a glimpse of a woman in a black dress watching their table, who disappeared before she could mention it to Nico. Or the morning she found a long dark hair on his collar, different from her blonde, different from his own, and how quickly he explained it away as belonging to his cleaning lady. The first near discovery came during their 3rd month together. Violet had arrived early at Nico's penthouse, letting herself in with her new key. The living room held lingering traces of perfume, Bulgari Black. She would later learn was Mia's signature scent. On his desk, a half-empty wine glass bore the imprint of red lipstick. When she asked, Nico laughed softly. "My sister was here. She helps manage my schedule." The way he said sister was oddly emphasized, but Violet dismissed her unease. At a charity auction in November, Violet overheard a socialite asking another guest, "Isn't that Nico Rossi's lover?" while looking at a striking dark-haired woman across the room. But when Violet turned, the woman had vanished into the crowd. Later that night, she found a handwritten note in Nico's jacket while hanging it up. "Tonight was perfect. Soon we won't have to hide. M." When confronted, Nico produced an invitation to a gallery opening from his sister MIA, written in identical handwriting. Each incident seemed innocent enough alone. But together, they formed a pattern Violet wouldn't recognize until it was too late. MIA was always there, watching from shadows, leaving traces like breadcrumbs, testing how close she could come to revealing herself without shattering their carefully constructed performance. The December wedding was a spectacle of wealth and power. 500 guests gathered at St. Patrick's Cathedral, society photographers documenting every moment. Violet floated down the aisle in custom Vera Wang, believing she'd found her fairy tale ending. She didn't notice the striking woman sitting in the last pew, watching the ceremony with an odd smile, her dark eyes never leaving Nico's face. At the reception, this same woman appeared briefly beside Nico as he greeted guests. "My sister, MIA, he explained quickly, but they moved apart before Violet could speak with her. Later, Violet would remember how Mia's eyes held no warmth when they shook hands, how her grip was just slightly too tight, how she seemed to be measuring Violet, assessing her like a specimen under glass. The signs were there, for those who knew where to look. The way Nico's smile didn't quite reach his eyes during the vows. How his kiss seemed more possessive than passionate. The strange tension when MIA appeared in photos with the couple, standing just slightly too close to Nico. The whispered conversations that stopped when anyone approached. The way both their eyes followed Violet's every move. When Nico insisted on Cabo San Lucas for their honeymoon, specifically the Esperanza Resort, Violet happily agreed. She didn't know he'd chosen it months ago, didn't realize MOA had already booked a room there under an alias. Like everything else in their relationship, it was part of a carefully constructed plan. Every detail had been arranged, every moment choreographed for what was to come. "You're going to love it there," Nico promised as they left the reception. "It's perfect for us. Everything's going to be perfect." His voice held an edge Violet didn't quite understand, his grip on her hand just a little too tight. As their private jet took off for Mexico 2 days later, Violet looked forward to 2 weeks in paradise. She had no way of knowing that her fairy tale romance was actually a carefully choreographed nightmare, or that the man beside her had planned her death before he ever said "I do." The first 3 days at Esperanza Resort were everything Violet had dreamed of. Nico was attentive, passionate, the perfect husband she thought she'd married. Each morning began with breakfast on their private balcony, his dark eyes drinking her in as if she were the only woman in the world. Their nights were filled with intense passion that left Violet breathless, believing she'd finally found true love. But on the 4th morning, everything changed. Violet was returning from her massage when she saw them by the infinity pool. Nico and MIA, his hand lingering too long on her bare shoulder. The way he looked at MIA mirrored exactly how he'd gazed at Violet that morning. When he spotted his wife, Nico's expression shifted seamlessly into warm welcome. But something had cracked in Violet's perfect world. "My sister surprised us," Nico explained over dinner, his hand possessively gripping Violet's thigh under the table. She was in Cancun for business. But later that night, Violet saw them in the hotel bar. Nico was whispering in Mia's ear, his lips brushing her skin, while Mia's eyes blazed with an intensity that made Violet shiver. When Nico returned to their suite, he made love to Violet with a desperate passion that left her both thrilled and unsettled. The next day, while Nico was on a business call, Violet found his phone unlocked. What she discovered shattered her reality. Hundreds of photos of her dating back years before they met. Violet at her office, at her favorite cafe, even outside her therapist's office. Alongside these were intimate photos of Nico and MIA. Tangled in sheets, kissing on beaches, embracing in luxury hotels. The timestamps showed their relationship spanning years, including the months he'd been courting Violet. Yet that evening, Nico's devotion seemed absolute as he surprised Violet with a private beach dinner. "You're everything to me," he whispered, his eyes burning with what appeared to be genuine love. "I've never felt this way before." Violet wanted desperately to believe him, even as doubt gnawed at her heart. His touch still set her skin on fire, his kisses still made her world spin. The next morning, she found MIA in their suite, wearing only Nico's dress shirt. "Oh, I borrowed some coffee," MIA said with a cold smile. "Nico always keeps his coffee exactly how I like it." The possessive emphasis on Nico's name made Violet's blood run cold. When Nico returned from his swim, he pulled Violet into a passionate kiss, as if marking his territory, while MIA watched with burning eyes. That night, unable to sleep, Violet followed the sound of voices to the resort's private beach. Hidden behind a palm tree, she watched Nico and MIA tangled in a desperate embrace. "I love her too," Nico growled, his hands rough in Mia's hair. "That's what's different this time." Mia's laugh was cruel. "You say that every time, darling. But I'm the only one you can't live without." The next day, Nico's attention was overwhelming. He cancelled their excursions to spend every moment with Violet, his passion almost frightening in its intensity. But she caught him watching MIA by the pool, his expression torn between two desperate hungers. When he kissed Violet at dinner, his eyes were on MIA. When he held MIA in secret, he whispered Violet's name. Everything came to a head when Violet found the wedding rings, 3 of them, hidden in Nico's suitcase, each belonging to a different dead wife. Her hands trembling, she read the inscriptions, each promising eternal love. Behind her, Mia's voice cut through the silence. "He loves them all, you know. That's what makes it so perfect. The passion is always real." Later that night, Violet overheard them in the suite's living room while she pretended to sleep. "She's starting to suspect," Nico said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I can see it in her eyes." There was a rustle of movement, the sound of a kiss. "Then it's time," MIA whispered. "You know we can't let her leave. Not when you love her this much." Violet lay in bed, tears sliding silently down her cheeks, as Nico slipped back in beside her. His arms wrapped around her with genuine tenderness, even as he plotted her death. In the darkness, she finally understood. His love was real, but it was as deadly as poison. Nico Rossi was a man capable of both absolute love and absolute destruction, and MIA was the demon who fed his darkest passions. As she drifted in and out of consciousness, she heard them again. Nico and MIA in the living room, their voices thick with passion and dark promise. After her, MOA was saying, "It will just be us." But Nico's response chilled Violet to her bones. "It's never just us, my love. You know I need them both, the love and the death. Just like you do." On the night of March 14, 2010, the Esperanza Resort security cameras captured the beginning of the end. At 11:47 p.m., Violet Monroe stood in her honeymoon suite, clutching printed photos of Nico and MIA spanning years. Her hands trembled as she laid out the evidence across the bed, vacation photos of them tangled in sheets, secret kisses in exotic locations, moments of passion spanning back years before she'd ever met Nico. Beside them, she placed the 3 wedding rings she'd found hidden in his suitcase, each inscribed with promises of eternal love to women who had vanished. Through the suite's open balcony doors, the sound of waves crashed against the shore, a peaceful counterpoint to the storm about to break. The moon cast long shadows across the luxury suite where she'd spent the past week believing in perfect love. Now those same shadows seemed to whisper of betrayal and death. "How many were there before me?" Violet's voice cracked as Nico entered the suite. He paused in the doorway, still handsome in his dinner jacket, the facade of charming businessman slowly melting away. For the first time, she saw his true face, beautiful and terrible in its intensity, like an angel carved from ice. "You weren't supposed to find those yet," he said softly, almost tenderly. "We had 2 more days of perfect love left." The resort's cameras caught Violet backing away as Nico advanced, his movements fluid like a predator. Her hip hit the dresser, rattling the expensive perfume bottles he'd bought her, the same scent she'd later realize all his wives had worn. "I do love you, Violet. That's what you don't understand. I love them all." His voice broke with genuine emotion. "Each time, it's real. Each time, it's perfect." He reached for her with hands that had both caressed and killed. "The love has to be real. That's what makes it beautiful." Behind him, MIA slipped into the suite like a shadow coming to life. The security footage showed her holding something that glinted in the dim light, a silver knife from the resort's kitchen. Her eyes blazed with a familiar hunger as she watched Nico corner his wife. "Show her, darling," MIA purred. "Show her how perfect your love can be." She moved like a dancer, graceful and deadly, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. Violet's scream pierced the night as understanding dawned. The other wives, the rings, the pattern of death, it wasn't just murder. It was ritual, sacred ceremony, terrible communion between 2 twisted souls who found ecstasy in destruction. "The moment you saw me at the gala," she gasped, "you were already planning this? Everything, our meeting, the whirlwind romance, the wedding, it was all orchestrated." "I chose you months before," Nico admitted, his eyes filled with tears and terrible love. "Watched you heal from your past, watched you learn to trust again. When you finally smiled at me that night, I felt my heart break knowing how it would end." He stepped closer, reaching for her face with trembling fingers. "But the love is real, Violet. It has to be real. That's why we wait, why we take time to let the love grow perfect before the end." Mia's laugh was soft and cruel as she pressed herself against Nico's back, her chin resting on his shoulder as they both watched Violet. "He falls in love every time. That's his gift. His curse." The knife in her hand caught the moonlight streaming through the balcony doors. "And I love watching him love them. Almost as much as I love watching them die. The moment when they realize the depth of his love is real, but so is their death. There's nothing more beautiful." Violet ran. Security footage tracked her desperate flight through the resort's corridors, past the honeymoon suite where they'd made passionate love just hours ago, past the private beach where she'd first seen them kiss, past the infinity pool where she'd begun to suspect the truth. Behind her, Nico and MIA moved in perfect synchronization, lovers in a dance of death they'd performed before. At 12:13 a.m., cameras captured Violet's failed attempt to reach the lobby. Nico cut her off at the service entrance, his expression anguished yet determined. "We could have had 2 more perfect days," he whispered, catching her arm. 2 more days of pure love, before the end. That's what I wanted to give you. The most perfect love story. The final confrontation played out in their suite, recorded by multiple angles. Violet fought like a trapped animal, leaving scratches down Nico's perfect face. But when MIA pressed the knife into his hand, he didn't hesitate. The love was real, he promised again, tears streaming down his face as MIA wrapped herself around him from behind. Remember that. In every kiss, every touch, every moment, the love was real. The resort's night manager later reported hearing Violet's last words through the door, "If you love me, prove it. Let me live." But it was MIA who answered, her voice thick with dark passion as she guided Nico's hand with the knife. "He proves his love by letting you die perfectly, in the moment of greatest passion. Like all the others. Like those before you. Like those who will come after." The security footage ends at 2:17 a.m. The cameras caught Nico's final words before the system mysteriously malfunctioned. "We could have been perfect forever." In the next recorded frame, 3 hours later, Nico sits calmly on the balcony, his shirt soaked in blood, while MIA methodically packs their belongings. Between them, on the floor of their honeymoon suite, lies the brutal truth about perfect love. Detective Hernandez sat in the dimly lit security office of Esperanza Resort, his eyes fixed on footage from 3 days before Violet's murder. On the screen, Nico Rossi pressed MIA DeLuca against a secluded hallway wall, their kiss passionate and familiar. Not the kiss of a brother and sister, but of longtime lovers sharing a desperate moment. Hours later, the same cameras would capture Nico returning to his suite, straightening his tie before entering to greet his unsuspecting wife. "They were like this every day," the security guard explained, fast-forwarding through clips. "Always when Mrs. Rossi was at the spa or pool. Sometimes twice a day." The footage showed a pattern, MIA visiting the suite, lingering touches in the restaurant, heated conversations in corners they thought hidden from view. But it was the older footage that chilled Hernandez to the bone. Security videos from the Grand Cayman Ritz-Carlton, June 2008. Same pattern, different bride. Emma Sullivan, age 28, found beaten to death in her honeymoon suite. Before that, the Four Seasons Maui, September 2007. Catherine Weber, 31. Another bride, another accident. And in both videos, there was MIA, watching from the shadows, playing the role of devoted sister. The resort bartender remembered conversations between Nico and MIA that now took on sinister significance. He'd grip her arm sometimes, whisper things that made her tremble, he told Hernandez. But not from fear, from excitement. Then he'd go back to his wife like nothing happened. It was disturbing. Financial records painted an even darker picture. Large transfers from Nico to offshore accounts in Mia's name after each marriage. Life insurance policies taken out on each bride, all paid in full. Properties bought and sold, assets moved with suspicious timing. A pattern of wealth accumulated through death. But it was Violet's friend Isabella who provided the most haunting evidence. 3 hours before her death, Violet had sent a final text, "He's not who he seems. MIA isn't his sister. Help." Attached was a photo taken through a crack in a door. Nico and MIA locked in an embrace, his hands tangled in her hair, her red lipstick smeared across his neck. Violet was starting to figure it out, Isabella sobbed during her interview. She found old photographs in his laptop. Nico and MIA at a beach resort in 2006, kissing. They've been lovers for years. All these marriages, these murders, they were just part of their sick game. Hotel staff described how Nico's behavior shifted when MIA was near. His carefully maintained charm would crack, revealing glimpses of obsessive passion. He couldn't keep his eyes off her, one maid reported. Even when Mrs. Rossi was right there, he was always watching MIA, like he was starving for her. The investigation uncovered their history. Nico and MIA had met in college, their relationship intense and volatile from the start. They fed each other's darkest impulses, their love twisted into something deadly. But Nico's family had threatened to cut him off if he married someone they considered beneath him. So they devised a plan. He would marry wealthy, respectable women, eliminate them, and inherit their fortunes. All while maintaining their secret affair. Security footage from the Esperanza showed how their plan worked. MIA would deliberately let Violet see little hints of their relationship, enjoying her growing distress. Nico would gaslight her concerns, all while flaunting his affair just enough to torment her. They were playing with her like cats with a mouse, drawing out her fear for their own pleasure. "Watch this," Hernandez told his team, playing footage from the night before the murder. Nico and MIA in the hotel bar, his hand possessively gripping her thigh while Violet sat alone in their suite. Later, MIA deliberately walked past Violet wearing Nico's dress shirt. Small cruelties, building toward the final act. The hotel manager described their last dinner together. Mr. Rossi ordered champagne, insisted they all toast together. The way he looked at them both, at his wife with cold calculation, at MIA with burning obsession. "I've never seen anything like it." As Hernandez pieced together their twisted relationship, he realized this was more than a simple murder plot. It was a dark love story between two sociopaths who got off on destruction. Each bride was just a player in their elaborate game of love, betrayal, and death. The final security footage from that night showed Nico pulling MIA into an alcove, whispering against her ear, "After tonight, it'll just be us. Like it always should have been." Hours later, Violet would be dead, and they would vanish together, their dark passion finally free to consume them both. Detective Hernandez spread the evidence across his office wall, photographs spanning 15 years of Nico and Mia's relationship. The earliest showed them as college students at NYU, her dark eyes already possessing that haunting intensity. Even then, MIA had watched Nico with an obsession that bordered on madness. The photos told a story of passion that had twisted into something deadly. Their first victim was Nico's college girlfriend, Agent Torres reported, pointing to a smiling blonde. Rebecca Mitchell disappeared in 2006. Everyone thought she'd left him, but we found her diary. She handed Hernandez the worn journal. She'd caught them together, but it wasn't just an affair. MIA was teaching Nico how to embrace his darkest desires. The diary's final entry chilled Hernandez. The way they look at each other, it's beyond love, beyond obsession. When they kiss, it's like they're consuming each other. And the way they both look at me now, like I'm prey. Like they're hungry. Hotel security footage from across the years revealed their evolution. Each honeymoon followed the same pattern. Nico, passionately in love with his new bride, while MIA watched from the shadows. But it was more than jealousy. MIA derived a perverse pleasure from watching Nico seduce and destroy. Each death fed their twisted bond. Found something disturbing in Mia's cloud storage, the tech analyst said, pulling up files. Videos of Nico with each wife. She recorded everything. The love scenes, the murders. Look at the file names, Perfect Love 1, Perfect Love 2. She saw it as art. Their greatest performances. The footage was devastating. Nico, capable of genuine passion with each woman, while MIA orchestrated their deaths like a director. Harder, her voice whispered in one video, as Nico strangled his second wife. Make it perfect. Their own intimacy seemed to feed on the violence. Witness statements from the Esperanza painted the final days of their latest performance. A honeymoon couple in the adjacent suite described hearing passionate lovemaking from both rooms. Nico with Violet in their suite, then Nico with MIA next door. The intensity was frightening, the wife reported. Like he was trying to devour them both. Isabella, Violet's friend, provided the last text messages. Something's wrong. The way they look at each other. It's like they share a secret language of cruelty. But then he looks at me with such love. I don't know what's real anymore. The forensics team found Mia's fingerprints on the knife, but the blood patterns told a more complex story. She guided his hand, the analyst explained, pointing to blood spatter on the wall. Like a lover teaching her partner to dance. The wounds show both hesitation and purpose. He wanted it to be perfect. A hotel maid described finding Mia's diary, hidden under the mattress of her room. The entries revealed an obsession that defied comprehension. Watching him fall in love is exquisite torture. Each time, I see him give his heart completely. But I am his soul. Only I understand his need to destroy what he loves. Only I can make his passion perfect. Security cameras caught their intimate moments between the acts of their play. Nico pressing MIA against walls, their kisses violent and desperate. MIA watching with dark satisfaction as Nico romanced Violet. Their whispered conversations in corners. Does it hurt, watching me love her? Nico. It's beautiful. Your love makes her death more perfect. MIA. The hotel bartender remembered their last night together. Mr. Rossi ordered 3 glasses of champagne. He took them to both rooms, moving between his wife and his sister like a man possessed. The passion was identical with both women. But when he looked at MIA, there was something else, like they were sharing a delicious secret. Detective Hernandez studied the final security footage, watching Nico and MIA flee into the Mexican dawn. Their body language spoke of relief, of completion, of dark ecstasy fulfilled. They moved as one creature, their love fed fresh by Violet's blood. We found their earliest correspondence, Agent Torres said, laying out letters from their college days. MIA recognized something in Nico, a capacity for both absolute love and absolute cruelty. She didn't create his darkness. She helped him embrace it. Their love could only be perfect if it destroyed others. The investigation revealed dozens of videos MIA had collected, intimate moments between Nico and each wife, followed by their violent ends. She had edited them together like love stories, adding music, creating terrible art from tragedy. Her obsession with documenting their perfect loves spoke of a mind that saw beauty in destruction. As Hernandez stared at the evidence wall, he understood the true horror. Nico and Mia's love wasn't just deadly, it was transcendent in its darkness. They had found in each other a passion that could only be sustained by death, a hunger that grew with each perfect murder. And somewhere out there, they were already hunting their next victim, ready to create another bloody masterpiece of love. The trial became international news. MIA played to the cameras, describing their crimes as great romance. But Nico's testimony shattered her performance. She was my dark muse, he admitted. But she forgot the most important thing. The love had to be real. Every time, with every wife, the love was genuine. That's what made it art. She tried to turn it artificial, mechanical. She betrayed our vision. In the end, justice was served, but questions remained. Had Mia's obsession with their art truly grown too strong? Or had Nico simply found a younger partner to dance their deadly dance? Had their perfect partnership collapsed under the weight of Mia's jealousy? Or had this too been part of their performance? The final word came in 2 suicide notes, smuggled between their cells but intercepted by guards. MIA wrote of eternal love, of artistic vision, of perfect moments preserved in blood. Nico's response was shorter. You forgot, my dark angel. Love must be real to be perfect. And you made our love ordinary. They were sentenced to life in separate maximum security prisons. MIA continues to grant interviews, describing their murders in loving detail. Nico maintains his silence, but visitors report seeing him watching young female guards with familiar, calculating charm. Detective Hernandez keeps their case file on his desk, studying it late at night. Sometimes he imagines he can hear Mia's voice. Love, death, art, we made them one. And somewhere in the darkness, 7 murdered wives bear witness to the perfect love that destroyed them all. The trial of Nico Rossi and MIA DeLuca captivated the world for 9 grueling weeks in spring 2011. The Manhattan courthouse became a theater for their final performance, with MIA taking every opportunity to transform their crimes into epic romance. She appeared each day in carefully chosen outfits that mimicked their victims' styles, her dark eyes never leaving Nico as she detailed their love story for the jury. You have to understand the artistry, she declared during her 3-day testimony. Each wife was chosen for her capacity to inspire genuine love. Nico didn't just seduce them, he became consumed by them. And I. Her voice dropped to an intimate whisper. I was the one who made that love perfect by ending it at its peak. Before it could fade. Before it could become commonplace. But it was Nico's testimony that shattered their dark fairy tale. Gone was the charming facade, replaced by cold fury as he took the stand. He wouldn't look at MIA, even as she called out to him. She was my dark muse, he testified, his voice carrying the weight of betrayal. She understood my need to love deeply, completely, destructively. But she forgot the most important thing. The love had to be real. His words visibly broke something in MIA. She screamed from her seat, had to be restrained. Every death was perfect, she cried. Every moment choreographed for maximum beauty. That's exactly what you never understood, Nico continued, finally turning to face her. Each wife, each love, each death, they were genuine. The passion was real. The pain was real. That's what made it art. But you. His lip curled in disgust. You tried to turn it artificial. Mechanical. You betrayed our vision with your petty jealousy. During the sentencing phase, prosecutors revealed the full extent of their crimes. 8 wives murdered across 5 countries. Millions in life insurance claims. A trail of devastated families seeking justice. But the true horror lay in the psychological evaluations. Mr. Rossi demonstrates a unique pathology, the court psychiatrist testified. He genuinely falls in love each time, experiencing real passion and devotion. The murder isn't just an act, it's the ultimate consummation of that love. Ms. DeLuca's role was to ensure these perfect moments were properly staged and documented. The breakdown of their partnership raised disturbing questions. Had Mia's obsession with their art truly grown too strong? Or had Nico found a younger, more devoted partner to dance their deadly dance? Rumors swirled about a beautiful prison clerk who'd been transferred after growing too close to Nico during pretrial hearings. Their final communication came through 2 suicide notes, smuggled between cells but intercepted by alert guards. Mia's was 12 pages long, a manifesto of their artistic vision. My darling, my dark soul, we elevated murder to high art. Each death was a brushstroke in our masterpiece. Even now, I feel the echo of their last breaths, the beauty of their final moments. We are immortal through our work. Nico's response was a single paragraph that broke MIA completely. You forgot, my dark angel, love must be real to be perfect. And you made our love ordinary. Your jealousy turned our elegant performances into crude theater. I could forgive you for many things, but I cannot forgive you for making our art banal. They were sentenced to life terms in separate maximum security prisons, Nico to Attica, MIA to Bedford Hills. She continues to grant interviews, describing their murders with theatrical flourish, each retelling more elaborate than the last. Journalists report her cell walls are covered with photos of their victims, arranged like a gallery exhibition. Nico maintains his silence behind bars, but his darkness hasn't diminished. 3 female guards have been reassigned after reporting unsettling interactions. Visitors describe seeing his familiar calculating charm directed at a young prison psychologist. Even in custody, his capacity for genuine, destructive love remains undiminished. Detective Hernandez keeps their case file on his desk, reviewing it late at night when the office is empty. Sometimes, reading Mia's flowery confessions, he imagines he can hear her voice. Love, death, art, we made them one. The crime scene photos seem to pulse with dark energy, each image a snapshot of love at its most destructive peak. And somewhere in the darkness, 8 murdered wives, their beauty forever preserved in violent death, bear witness to a love story that transformed romance into horror, passion into murder, and 2 twisted souls into the artists of perfect destruction.